What if the key to overcoming depression wasn't like popping a pill every single day? What if it was a single experience, like a mind-bending one? Today, we are going to deep dive into psychedelics,
Okay.
DMT, and psilocybin specifically, to see if these substances, I mean, they were demonized for so long.
Right.
Could they actually have the potential to heal?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, especially when you think about the historical context. I mean, these substances were basically taboo, right? Research was really stifled for decades, and now we are seeing this huge resurgence of interest in their therapeutic potential.
It is. It's like we were rediscovering something.
Yeah.
Like ancient, but also cutting edge at the same time.
Exactly.
So let's start with DMT,
Okay.
a naturally occurring psychedelic.
Yeah.
And it's found in the human brain
Wow.
and in plants in the Amazon. Shamans have used it in rituals for centuries.
Yeah.
And then in the 90s, Dr. Rick Strassman, he conducted this groundbreaking research, giving volunteers DMT in a controlled setting, and then documented all their experiences. And his book, DMT, The Spirit Molecule,
Yeah, I've heard of it.
it's full of these accounts. They almost sound like sci-fi.
Right.
Encounters with like other beings,
Oh, wow.
feelings of dying and rebirth,
Interesting.
these profound insights into the nature of reality.
Yeah, Strassman's work was really pioneering, especially because he had so many obstacles to overcome just to get permission to even study DMT. He had to go through all these hoops with the DEA, the FDA,
Right.
which really highlights how restricted research on these substances was for a really long time.
Yeah, he was like a detective trying to uncover this hidden truth.
You're right.
And then there's the whole question of dosage, like how much to give people.
Yeah.
And in his book, he talks about how initially he was giving people this certain dose intramuscularly
Okay.
and quickly realized, based on the volunteers' reaction, that it was way too much.
Oh, wow.
It really shows just how potent DMT is. Like even small variations in that dosage, it can lead to drastically different experiences.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, he ended up using a lower dose, but even then, people were having really intense experiences. Like one volunteer, they described it as a cosmic blowtorch.
Oh, wow.
Just this overwhelming rush of colors, sensations, and another volunteer, they felt like they were just hovering over this alien landscape.
Wow.
Just seeing things beyond imagination.
Mind-boggling.
It is.
But what's even more fascinating to me is that his research wasn't just about documenting all these crazy experiences.
Right.
He was also investigating this connection between DMT and the pineal gland.
The pineal gland, yeah.
That tiny little pine cone-shaped gland in the brain.
Right.
And these naturally occurring mystical states. It's
So interesting. And he initially thought it was melatonin, right? Like
Yes.
that was the spirit molecule. But his research led him to focus more on DMT instead. And his theory was that the pineal gland, it might actually be producing DMT during these really profound, altered states of consciousness, like near-death experiences, intense dreams, even childbirth. So, we might already have this really powerful psychedelic substance already present in our brains, just waiting to be activated under the right conditions.
right, so it's already in there.
Yeah,
It just needs something to kind of kick it off.
exactly. And there's this idea of a kindling effect. Like even these small amounts of DMT could trigger this whole cascade of events leading to this full-blown psychedelic experience.
Like a tiny spark that ignites this bonfire in the brain.
Exactly.
Wow. It makes you wonder, right? Could those trace amounts of DMT be subtly influencing our perception and consciousness, even when we're not having these like full-blown intense psychedelic experiences?
It's a really interesting question.
It is. Now let's shift gears a little bit and talk about psilocybin,
Okay.
the psychoactive compound that's found in magic mushrooms.
Right?
Michael Pollan, in his book, How to Change Your Mind,
Yes.
he does such a great job of exploring that whole modern psychedelic renaissance
He really does.
and how psilocybin is now being studied for its potential to treat conditions like depression, addiction, even end-of-life anxiety in cancer patients.
Yeah, Pollan's book, it provides such a valuable historical and cultural context. I mean, it's important to remember that these substances were used for centuries, right?
Right?
In these spiritual and therapeutic settings before, they were basically outlawed. And now it seems like, we've come full circle. We're rediscovering their potential.
And this time, we're approaching it with a lot more scientific rigor, thanks to researchers like Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins.
Absolutely.
They're conducting these carefully controlled studies
Right.
on psilocybin's effects.
Yeah.
like specifically its ability to alleviate depression and anxiety.
You know, one thing that's really interesting is this emphasis on set and setting.
Yeah.
Like, have you heard about Al Hubbard?
Yeah.
He was like this early pioneer in psychedelic research, and he recognized how crucial the environment and the mindset of the person are in shaping that whole experience.
Right.
He would actually create these really positive and supportive environments for his patients, you know, understanding that it wasn't just about the drug itself, it was about the whole context in which it was taken.
It makes total sense. It's like listening to your favorite music in a beautiful concert hall versus listening to it on a noisy subway.
Exactly.
Same music, totally different experience.
Yeah, it highlights how the external environment and also the person's internal state of mind, they can so profoundly influence the whole trajectory of a psychedelic experience.
And that leads us to a really fundamental question, right? Is it the drug itself that's healing, or is it the experience that it unlocks?
Yeah, I think that's a really key question that a lot of researchers they're really wrestling with that. There's this idea of predictive coding, where our brains, they're kind of creating this model of reality based on all our past experiences and all that sensory information that we're constantly taking in. You can kind of think of it like a filter, right? That shapes how we see the world.
So our brains are kind of making predictions about what to expect all the time based on what we've already experienced.
Exactly, yeah. And psychedelics, they seem to disrupt that whole model, like shake up that snow globe of perception and allow for this fresh, unfiltered perspective on the world. And that disruption, that shaking loose of those really ingrained thought patterns, that could be what helps people break free from those negative thought loops that contribute to depression.
So it's not like fixing a chemical imbalance. It's more like these substances are almost like helping to reboot the system, like allowing a new way of seeing and experiencing things.
Yeah, that's a helpful analogy. Researchers are also exploring how psychedelics affect that default mode network in the brain, the region that's associated with self-reflection and our sense of ego. Psychedelics, they seem to dampen the activity in that network, which might explain that feeling of ego dissolution or oneness with everything that a lot of people report.
So it's interesting how these substances can seemingly dissolve the boundaries between self and other and lead to these really profound mystical experiences. Like these have been reported throughout history and across so many different cultures.
Yeah. And what's really compelling is that the intensity of those mystical experiences, it seems to correlate with how much symptom relief people experience. The research by Roland Griffiths at Johns Hopkins, which we touched on earlier, is showing some remarkable results using psilocybin to treat depression and anxiety in cancer patients. In one study, 80% of the participants, they reported these really clinically significant reductions in their symptoms, and it lasted for at least 6 months. And the intensity of that mystical experience during the psilocybin session, it actually predicted how much their symptoms would improve.
That's incredible. It really suggests that there's something about these profound, almost transcendent experiences that can really facilitate healing in a way that traditional therapies sometimes struggle to do.
Yeah, it's definitely a promising avenue for more exploration. Of course, it's important to note that all this research, it's still pretty early. We need more studies to fully understand the long-term effects and the potential risks involved. But these early findings are incredibly encouraging.
They are. And, we've been focusing a lot on DMT and psilocybin. But it's important to remember that there are other psychedelics that are being studied for their potential therapeutic benefits, like LSD and MDMA.
Right.
Each substance, it seems to have its own unique effects and might be better suited for different applications.
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's a growing interest in how these substances can be used together with psychotherapy to actually enhance treatment outcomes. For instance, some therapists are using MDMA, also known as ecstasy, in a controlled setting, to help patients process trauma. The idea is that MDMA, it can create this sense of safety and trust, allowing individuals to kind of revisit traumatic memories without being completely overwhelmed by, fear or anxiety.
So it's not just about taking the drug and hoping for the best. It's about integrating those experiences into a therapeutic framework with the guidance of a trained professional. Which, if you think about it, brings us back to Al Hubbard and his emphasis on set and setting. It seems like he understood intuitively, even back then, that these substances, they were powerful tools and they required really careful handling and and integration.
He really was ahead of his time, Hubbard, I mean. He recognized that just taking a psychedelic, that wasn't enough. You needed that skilled guide to help you navigate all those powerful experiences and then to integrate the insights you gain from that journey back into daily life. That's where the real healing and growth happens.
Makes you wonder if we're like on the verge of this paradigm shift in mental health care, one that embraces these non-ordinary states of consciousness, like really embraces them.
It feels like it, right? I mean, it's a shift that's already happening. We see this growing movement to decriminalize psychedelics in cities all across the country. And organizations like MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, they're doing amazing work to advance scientific research and therapeutic applications.
It's really exciting to see all this change happening, but it also kind of raises this important question. As psychedelics become more mainstream, how do we make sure that they're used responsibly and ethically? You know? We don't want to just repeat the mistakes of the past where these substances were demonized and driven underground, and we cut off all that valuable research and potential therapeutic benefits.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have to learn from history and approach this resurgence of interest with a lot of caution and wisdom. That means investing in rigorous scientific research, training qualified therapists, and creating some really clear guidelines for safe and ethical use.
And it's not just about, the clinical setting, right? We also need to educate the public, dispel all those myths and misinformation that still surround these substances, and foster this culture of respect and understanding.
Yeah, because ultimately it's not about the drugs themselves. It's about the potential they hold to alleviate suffering, promote healing, and, help us expand our understanding of consciousness itself.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Could these substances that were once relegated to the shadows, could they actually hold the key to unlocking healing and growth for you?
I mean, the research definitely suggests that they might, but it's so crucial to approach this whole topic with a healthy dose of curiosity and caution. Do your own research, explore the resources we've mentioned today, and just remember that psychedelics, they're not a magic bullet, they're powerful tools, and they require careful consideration and preparation and integration.
And if you are thinking about exploring these substances, please do it with the guidance of a qualified professional. And don't underestimate the importance of set and setting. Create a safe and supportive and intentional environment for your journey.
And I think maybe most importantly, go into that experience with an open mind and heart. Be willing to face whatever comes up, to embrace the unknown, and just trust in your own capacity for healing and transformation.
It's a journey, isn't it? A journey of self-discovery. Who knows what we'll find along the way?
The possibilities are limitless. Thanks for joining us on this exploration.